Okay, so we're practicing some of the basic identities. So we're going to simplify each one of these down to either one trig function or a value. Okay, so cotangent times sine theta. Okay, so we're going to simplify this. We're going to use some of the basic identities. Well, the steps say you should look for any kind of algebraic simplification first. I don't have any kind of algebraic simplification I can do here. So I'm going to move on to using some of my identities. So cotangent, we know, is cosine theta over sine theta. Okay? So I'm going to switch out cosine theta over sine theta for cotangent. Now I can multiply these to get it to one value, but I see that sine divides out with sine, which just leaves me with cosine theta. Okay? So cotangent times sine is just cosine theta. So we just proved a new identity. Okay? Number 2, cosine divided by secant. Well, again, is there any kind of algebra I can do? Well, on this one, yes, because dividing by a number is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. So cosine divided by secant is the same thing as cosine times the reciprocal of secant, which is cosine, which gives me cosine squared. So cosine times cosine is cosine squared. Or you could write it like this, but we don't do that. We don't write cosine. We don't write it like this. This is the correct way of writing it. Mathematicians are lazy, so if we can get away with not having to write those two parentheses, we're going to figure out a way to write that without those two parentheses. Okay? All right. The next one, tangent theta divided by secant theta. Well, again, this is like the one before it. So we have tangent divided by secant. Well, dividing by secant, just like the last one, is the same thing as multiplying by cosine. Okay. And then we all know that tangent is sine theta over cosine theta times cosine theta, and then cosine divides out with cosine, which leaves us with sine theta. So this is very similar to the very first one we did. Cotangent times sine is cosine, just like tangent times cosine is sine. And this actually was in this one right here, was in your notes. It talked about how we rearrange tangent. Okay? All right. Number 4, 1 minus sine theta. For this one, we're actually going to use one of our identities. We have one of our identities that says sine squared x plus cosine squared x equals 1. And I asked you on your formula chart to rewrite it. And when you rewrite it, you get cosine squared x equals 1 minus sine squared x. So this is what we have right here. So this is just cosine squared x. So knowing these identities is going to help you out in the long run. And the last one, secant squared minus tangent squared, that is one of my identities, and that's equal to 1. So, and it, literally on your formula chart, it says this. I mean, it says exactly what I've written here. Secant squared x minus tangent squared x equals 1. This is one of our basic identities. Okay? So this is just showing you how to use some of our basic identities. We're basically taking them and saying, okay, this is equal to this, and using it to simplify.